Cairo was supposed to be Africa's aviation gateway, perfectly placed, dominant for decades, unchallenged. But today, it's Ethiopia, landlocked and once dismissed, that controls the continent's skies, moving more passengers than Egypt ever did. Geography promised Egypt eternal power. Ethiopia had nothing but a different idea. So how did the impossible nation outsmart its rival and turn Africa's map upside down? Cairo's rise as Africa's aviation nerve center began in the aftermath of World War II, when air travel was still a luxury reserved for diplomats, business leaders, and the political elite. EgyptAir, founded as Mizr Airlines in 1932, quickly transformed Cairo into the continent's busiest crossroads. The city's location, bridging Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, turned its airport into a natural stopover for flights linking London to Johannesburg, Paris to Nairobi, and beyond. By the 1960s, EgyptAir's route map stretched from Milan and Vienna to Karachi, connecting dozens of capitals and commercial hubs. Throughout the 1970s and the 1980s, Cairo International Airport bustled with activity. Wide-body jets, Airbus A300s, and Boeing 767s joined the fleet, enabling non-stop flights across continents. For travelers from sub-Saharan Africa, Cairo was the gateway to the world. Airlines from Europe and Asia scheduled their African connections through Egypt, relying on the city's runways to bridge hemispheres. Historians describe this era as Cairo's golden age. Tens of thousands of passengers moved through its terminals each month, and EgyptAir's blue and gold livery became a familiar sight from Lagos to Beirut. The airport's significance extended beyond passenger traffic. Cairo handled the lion's share of Africa's air cargo, with freight moving between continents through its warehouses and tarmacs. For decades, no other African city rivaled its volume or reach. International carriers, seeing the advantage, established regional offices and maintenance operations in the city. Egypt's aviation planners saw geography as destiny. With the Red Sea to the east, the Mediterranean to the north, and the Suez Canal channeling global commerce nearby, the assumption was simple. As long as planes needed to cross Africa, they would pass through Cairo. This confidence shaped not only EgyptAir's strategy, but also the country's sense of its own place in the world. In those years, the idea of any other African city challenging Cairo's supremacy seemed far-fetched, if not impossible. By early 2011, Cairo's runways still buzzed with international arrivals, but the city's aviation fortune was about to unravel. Protests in Tahrir Square spilled into the headlines, and the world's airlines took notice. Within weeks, international carriers began rerouting flights to avoid Egyptian airspace, driven by security advisories and insurance surcharges that made Cairo a risk few were willing to take. Notices to airmen warned of unpredictable conditions, and aviation insurers raised premiums or threatened to withdraw coverage altogether for flights transiting Egypt. The result was immediate and dramatic. Transit traffic at Cairo, which once accounted for nearly a third of all airport movements, collapsed to almost nothing. Flight tracking data from the period shows a sharp drop in Europe to Africa connections routed through Cairo. Airlines that had once relied on Egypt as a continental bridge now sent their passengers through Istanbul, Dubai, or even Nairobi, bypassing the Egyptian capital entirely. EgyptAir's network shrank as routes to sub-Saharan Africa were cut or suspended. For the first time in decades, Cairo lost its place as Africa's indispensable gateway. As political turmoil dragged on, the airport's strategic advantage became a liability. Recovery proved elusive. By 2012, Cairo International's annual passenger numbers had dropped by millions, and the lucrative transit market had evaporated. Even as stability gradually returned, the airport ran up against hard physical limits. Terminal 3, opened in 2009, was designed for 18 to 22 million passengers a year, but by 2015, the airport was already straining near its 25 million capacity ceiling. Two main runways, capable of 45 to 50 movements per hour, now struggled to absorb peak traffic during seasonal surges. Delays became routine, and airlines complained of congestion and inefficiency. EgyptAir, once Africa's premier international carrier, found itself hemmed in by both circumstance and infrastructure. Efforts to expand or modernize the airport lagged behind regional competitors. Geography, once an unassailable asset, had become a bottleneck. The assumption that proximity alone would guarantee dominance had proven dangerously fragile. March 8, 2019. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 plunged into the earth just minutes after takeoff, claiming 157 lives. The world's attention locked onto Addis Ababa, and the future of Africa's most ambitious airline seemed to hang by a thread. In the hours that followed, investigators from the Ethiopian Civil Aviation Authority and France's BEA combed through debris and flight data, searching for answers. Early findings pointed to faulty sensor readings and a malfunction in the aircraft's MCAS system, a problem already haunting Boeing's 737 MAX fleet. Ethiopian Airlines faced an agonizing decision. CEO Tewolde Gebre Mariam gathered his leadership team and, after consulting with technical experts and regulators, made the call to ground all 737 AMX aircraft, a decision that grounded the fleet. This action came before the United States or Europe moved, sending a clear message about where the airline's priorities lay. Within days, aviation authorities across Africa followed suit, reinforcing Ethiopia's stance on safety. The crisis could have shattered decades of progress. Instead, Ethiopia's swift, transparent response preserved the airline's reputation. Pilots, engineers, and safety officers worked around the clock, updating protocols and retraining crews. The airline's in-house maintenance division became a hub of activity, supporting not just Ethiopia's own fleet, but also assisting regional partners. As the world's regulators debated, Addis Ababa's resolve stood firm. Tewolde reflected that some targets they set in 2010 to be achieved by 2025 were achieved by 2016. The crash tested the airline's foundation, but the institution refused to break. Out of tragedy, Ethiopia's commitment to safety and resilience only deepened, setting the stage for the next phase of its rise. Vision 2025 was more than a slogan. It was a blueprint that reimagined what an African airline could achieve. Tewolde Gebre Mariam and his team set out to build not just a carrier, but an aviation group that could thrive despite Ethiopia's landlocked geography. The plan called for rapid expansion, new aircraft, more destinations, and a technical backbone that would serve the entire continent. By 2016, many of the targets set for 2025 were already met. Ethiopian Airlines had acquired the continent's first Boeing 787 Dreamliner, giving it an edge on long-haul routes from high-altitude Addis Ababa. The airport's elevation, over 7,600 feet, meant longer runways and careful calculations for every takeoff, but also allowed wide-body jets to operate at full capacity, connecting Africa directly to Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Cargo became a pillar of growth, turning Ethiopia's flour exports into a global business. Each night, refrigerated shipments left Addis for Amsterdam, Brussels, and beyond, filling the bellies of 777 freighters. A cargo operations manager described the transformation. "We used to send a few boxes a week. Now it's thousands of tons each month." By 2024, cargo revenue fueled investments in fleet renewal and training. Ethiopia's Aviation Academy trained pilots and engineers not only for its own needs, but for airlines across Africa. making Addis a center for technical excellence. The result was a network that fed traffic into Addis from dozens of secondary hubs, all supported by a modern, reliable fleet. Where geography once set limits, strategy and execution rewrote the rules. Ethiopian Airlines built its advantage not by competing city for city, but by weaving a web of partnerships that turned the continent into a single, interconnected network. In Togo, a 40% stake in ASCI Airlines gave Ethiopian a West African hub at Lome. In Malawi, a 49% share brought Lilongwe into the fold. Zambia Airways relaunched with Ethiopian holding 45%, anchoring Lusaka as a southern connector. Each partnership followed a similar pattern: minority equity for political acceptance, management and training for operational control, and synchronized schedules to funnel passengers and cargo back to Addis Ababa. These stakes ensured that regional carriers served as feeders, not rivals, locking in traffic flows that built Addis into Africa's busiest transfer point. The strategy demanded infrastructure to match. Addis Ababa Bole Airport now strains at 25 million annual passengers, pushing Ethiopian to break ground in January 2026 on Bishoftu International Airport, 4 runways, a projected 110 million passenger capacity, and a plan to handle the world's largest aircraft, all designed to future-proof the hub. The financing is as ambitious as the build itself. 30% of the $12.5 billion comes from Ethiopian's own coffers, while the rest draws on a mosaic of lenders. The African Development Bank leads with $500 million and coordinates a broader $8.7 billion push. U.S. agencies add up to $2 billion, with conditions that keep Chinese contractors at arm's length. Commitments are expected from the Middle East, Europe, and China, balancing global interests but ensuring no single backer can dictate terms. With these moves, Ethiopian has created a self-reinforcing system. Every feeder partnership, every runway poured at Bishoftu, makes it harder for any competitor to break the chain. The scale is now so vast, the capital investment so deep, that the network itself becomes the barrier, locking in Ethiopia's place at the center of African aviation. Today, Africa's busiest skies converge above Addis Ababa, not by accident, but by design. As new airports rise and networks expand, control of the continent's airspace depends on vision, not geography. In aviation, the future belongs to those who build it. What do you think comes next?